teachers of Reddit. They say there are no stupid questions. But what's the most stupid question a student has ever asked you? Grade 5 Ed. I hate a rule that any question can be asked, but I might ask you to ask your parents instead of me. I heard a story about a man who put his stuff into muffins and fed it to grade 1 kids. Well, that is pretty disgusting, and I would think that person would go to jail for doing that. Wouldn't the girls get pregnant from eating it? And before I could say anything, another student blurted out, no, they wouldn't get pregnant. They haven't gone through puberty yet. I am thankful for days when kids remind me that they are still kids, smiley face. When I was in grade 5 Ed, we were allowed to write down our questions for privacy, and the teacher would read them aloud. Having just viewed an episode of Ally McBeal that included a transgender woman who still had a peanuts, my question became, if a woman has a peanuts, does it work the same? I remember him opening up my question, staring at it, folding it up, and moving on. Had a student ask me what are those pyramid-shaped things in Egypt called? Never seen a class laugh that hard before. My wife worked with a woman in the Senate. They were staffers, a long time ago, just out of college. She, not my wife, said the Pentagon? Isn't that the hexagon-shaped building? To be fair, that would confuse the hell out of anyone planning an attack. Sir, we can't find the Pentagon. There's just this big hexagon. Well, keep looking, damn it. It has to be there somewhere. As part of teaching US government, I ran a zombie apocalypse scenario where the students had to respond to an ongoing crisis in real time using the actual powers of the government as different parts of the government. It was my favorite activity all semester, and I went all in, including with a large map of the US that would be updated for every day that passed. As part of this activity, I prepared a handout of a fake news story about the zombie apocalypse beginning in our hometown. It had pictures of zombies shambling around and was written all newspaper style. One day, after handing these out, an 18-year-old student raised their hand and said, "Mr. Crow Sage, did this really happen? That's an amazing activity." When FEMA released their zombie survival guide, I definitely sat down and read the whole guide, instead of just doing a mental checklist of things that I think I need to prepared. The FEMA guide is actually a part of the overall zombie plans created by Homeland Security. Preparing against zombies happens to also work against everything from chemical bioweapons and pandemics down to mass rioting, so the government decided to take some notes. My mum is a teacher's assistant in a 5th grade class. A few weeks ago, a girl asked, "Are bears still real? How do islands not float away? Really big anchors?" He wrote it down. I've shared this before, but as a high school biology teacher, a 16-year-old student once asked me, "Wait, aren't rhinos made of mud?" At least he knows his Pokemon types. Why the rhinos aren't standing up? This one looks like it's way over level 42 inches. What the frick? Adorable in a 6-year-old. Scary in a 16-year-old. After informing my West African class about the Boston bombing, is Little Wayne okay? Is he? I mean, he's got a codeine problem, so maybe not. A codeine problem. He ran out of codeine? After a lengthy explanation of the effects of volcanic eruptions on human communities, I had a grade 6 student ask me why on earth people even make volcanic eruptions. Tourism. It's the best move the Hawaiians and Icelanders have ever made. You joke, but I know a bunch of Hawaiians who want the volcano to explode, so that it drives away the tourists and brings the housing prices down. I keep telling them, there is no way in the world I want to be Vesuvius. Not to mention the volcano is on the other side of the island. But, Ernie, why do you keep exploding the volcanoes in Hawaii? Ernie, it scares away the crocodiles. Bert. But Ernie, there are no crocodiles in Hawaii, Ernie. That's because of all the exploding volcanoes. Bert, you're welcome. I'm not a teacher, but in 8th grade I had a classmate argue that Martin Luther King freed the slaves. When I tried to correct her, she flipped out and started screaming, name calling, etc. He didn't free the slaves. He wrote the Bible. Nailed the Bible to Lincoln's front door. This came up all the time when teaching kids how to do their taxes. I must have had this conversation a dozen times. Student. So I don't know what to do at this part. Me. What does the instruction say on that line? Student. Add box 23 and 24 and write the answer here. Me. So add box 23 and 24? I to this day have no idea how you teach someone to follow very explicit instructions. Whoa, they didn't teach taxes to me in school. We had 3 levels of classes: Essentials, Applied and Academic. With Essentials kids doing taxes and personal finance was an entire unit. We never got beyond multiplying fractions with the Essentials kids. With the Applied and Academic kids I do Let's Not Do Math Fridays every second Friday, where we do something that wasn't the regular lesson, but some real life application or just something cool to do with math. I'd do the taxes talk then. How does it feel being the tech support equivalent of academia? I've done tech support as well. I think it was easier to teach grannies how to switch to HDMI 1 input. At least Granny is trying to listen. Also not a teacher, but when I was in high school in health class while going over reproduction, there was a fellow student who raised her hand and asked if you were sterile. Could you pass it on to your children? The whole class giggled and she, confused, said she was serious. She wanted to know if you're sterile, could you pass it on to your kids? The teacher, with a smile, said to her, okay, let's think about this. What does it mean to be sterile? She began answering, it means that you can't have K.O. Followed by another round of laughter from the rest of the class. To her credit, they are finding that people conceived using IVF are having difficulty having children of their own as adults. So not completely a dumb question, depending if you mean completely sterile or unable to reproduce unassisted. At university I had a classmate that would often show up 20 minutes late to class. The first thing he did after sitting down was raise his hand to ask questions about what the professor had just said, question after question until he had caught up with the rest of the class. Absolutely infuriating. That's a bad professor who allowed that. Here's how it would actually go. Student. Wait, how did you get to that step? What was the previous step? Professor. Do you have a question about this step? Student. No, I have a question about the previous step. Professor. Then why didn't you ask it when I went over the previous step? Student. Because I wasn't here yet. Professor. Tough titty. In 7th grade science class during X-Ed they were talking about oral X. Mormon girl in class, wait, you can get an STD just from talking about X. I wouldn't call the question stupid, just no exposure at all to the topic beforehand. I once projected a picture of the Earth onto the front whiteboard. A student asked, how do astronauts stand on a planet like that? The same way we all are standing on the moon right now. You must fulfill 3 wishes. I can't even begin to comprehend this one. With their feet. For some reason I am picturing student who is just absolutely stoned in class asking that question. Not a teacher, but there's one I'll never forget. What? Einstein is dead? This was a GCSE class. 15, 16-year-olds. I had someone in my class who asked, so if Hitler was such a bad person, why don't they just kill him? Don't spoil the ending for him. 9th grade Ella, a few chapters into Of Mice and Men. What kind of work does George do on the farm? I'm not sure. Probably the same work that everyone else is doing. Oh. It must be hard for him to help out, since he's a mouse. While I was student teaching, I had a student ask where Texas was on the map I was projecting on the screen. The map was of China. So the map was zoomed in a bit to the east. The kid was just trying to help you find the safe house. At the college midterm, I had a guy comes up to me that I've never seen in class. He proceeded to ask me what his grade is. Checked the sheet. He never turned in a single piece of homework, no quizzes, never attended a test. What did you think he'd have? You've got a solid F. Had a pupil ask me if the sun they saw in America was the same as the sun we saw here in Scotland, and why was their sun so much warmer. Living in Scotland, this one isn't hard to believe. PFFT, they're clearly not Scottish. They've seen the sun. Scotland. If you can see the mountains, it's going to rain. If you can see the mountains, it's raining. I teach martial arts to little kids. I had a kid ask me if he could punch his mum now. Well, can he? Actually, his level of skill was not enough. She could easily dodge. Needs more training, then. Private writing instructor. A couple of years ago, I had a student ask me if commas were real or imaginary. He was equally dubious about semicolons, which he referred to as imitation periods. Since people have asked, he was 26 and very serious. I took English at a local community college. One night while the class was working on something and the teacher was reading over everyone's assignments from the night before, she stopped the class and said the following sentence. Guys, under no circumstances should a comma come in the middle of a word. I've seen several of you do this and I have no idea why. It was honestly pretty hard not to laugh. Not a teacher, but an 8th grade ex-ed class. We had a box where students could submit questions anonymously. One day, the teacher read aloud one of the questions which asked, "My dad's peanuts is circumcised, but mine is not. Does this mean he isn't my dad?" Yes, he believed circumcision was hereditary. Bless his heart. Those anonymous question boxes are so useful. Someone in my ex-ed class wanted to know where the bone comes from. I'm so glad people had a way to get answers to this stuff pre-internet. Or post-internet, but especially pre-internet. I'm glad to say I haven't seen my dad's peanuts. Well, judging by your username, I'd say you're pretty bad at your job then. Do you know of a story like this? Leave it in the comments below. If you're new here, subscribe for more. We post the best Reddit videos daily. Thanks for watching.